Hi, this is Catherine, and this is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is Jane's Garden from Harney & Sons, which is a green, florally tea, which I thought was appropriate because we're doing Jane Austen July this month. And I am talking about something now that is pretty related to Jane Austen, although it will go off into other tangents as well, and that is letter writing. So I'm going to show you my collection of letters, actual non-fiction letters. Well, I say that because I do have novels that are epistolary novels, and I do like some of them. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, it's a mouthful, is one of my favorites. Anything about books, come on. But I don't tend to favor that form of communication, that form of novel, because it feels unreal to me. Because most people, when they write letters, they will talk about things. They may talk about a conversation they had, but they will not list it verbatim, which most epistolary novels do, and it takes me out of that situation, because I'm like, that's not how people write letters usually. And it really isn't. Most of the letters I've read in these collections are not like that, so it just not realistic to me. But I know it was the way people wrote novels for a while, so I'm not going to totally knock it. At least there were novels that were existing at some point. But in Jane Austen's life, letters were extremely important because that's how she communicated with people when they weren't face to face. That was it. I mean, they must have had a decent enough postal system. I know I've read up on it before, but I've quite forgotten what I've read. They must have had a decent enough postal system because they were writing back and forth. And I know within the country it probably was pretty good, but outside, I know I was reading that to get a letter to India, for instance, from the UK took about 6 months. I mean, I have to be grateful now that we have things like WhatsApp or whatever, but still, back then that's what they had. And even though you may say, okay, that's a pain, but for historians, letters are a great thing because you learn so much about the way people live just because that was their only other way of communicating. Most people did not keep journals or write memoirs. So if they were literate and they wrote to each other, there's a lot of writings there if it wasn't burnt, Cassandra. But so that is extremely important. Also in her novels, it's important because sometimes it drives the story forward. There will be things happening and suddenly someone will say, oh, I got a letter from somebody. In Emma, that's a lot. Oh, we have a letter from Jane Fairfax. We have a letter from, Frank Churchill, etc. And other letters are love letters in different books, and other letters are bearings of bad tidings, etc. So that's nice. So letters are extremely important. So I thought that tied in well with my going over my letters libraries, and I'm going to read a few letters, so this might be a bit of a long stretch. But I won't read from every book. I will show you some things, and they're going to be kind of out of order. But I'm going to first show you one of my older books that I have. And it has some of the oldest writings in it. The World's Great Letters. And it goes back from ancient times. It has letters from the Bible, which is probably some of the oldest collections of letters. Mostly the apostles were writing letters, so that was a big one. There's correspondence from Alexander the Great, etc. And I don't know if all these people were able to read, these kings and queens, for instance. I don't know. But they had messengers, so someone wrote things down and someone read them. This book is from 1940. It ends in a letter from, I think it's Thomas Mann, how do you pronounce his name? In speaking about the Hitler regime. And he indicts the Hitler regime for its secret and open crimes. Can you imagine when this was published, how that was still happening? Yeah, but I thought I'd just show, I'd read one letter, because it's always the one I remember when I see this volume. And this Aurelian, the Emperor of Rome, had ordered Zenobia, the Queen of Palmyra, to surrender. And I am always fascinated with that because my cat's name is Zenobia. So she writes back to him, "No man ever yet presumed to command me as you have done. Bravery alone, Aurelian, will accomplish your ends in war. You demand that I surrender my city of Palmyra, as if you did not know that my ancestress, Cleopatra, preferred to die a queen than live a slave, of however great position, to your predecessor Augustus. We await help from the Persians. The Saracens arm for us. The Armenians have declared in our favor. A band of highwaymen has defeated your army in Syria. Then judge what is in store for you when all these forces arrive. You will surely change your tone then, and not command me so imperiously to give up my birthright, as if you were the absolute disposer of the universe. I mean, that is dramatic. And it's great, even though she did end up having to concede defeat in the end, but I think she had a little bit of a better turnout than Cleopatra. But just fantastic. I don't know. I always like reading about that kind of you will surely change your tone. So that's one of the historical letters. Most of these I'm going to show you are not really necessarily historical, but we can go a little bit forward in time to, let's see, what am I going to show you next? I have so many volumes, and most of them are a little more modern, so maybe I have to read to you some more things. Oh yes, so I got this collection at Argosy bookstores, which is a fantastic kind of antiquarian bookshop, but they still have some affordable books in Midtown Manhattan. And this was called The Spur of Fame, Dialogues of John Adams and Benjamin Rush, 1805 to 1813. So this is John Adams, this is Benjamin Rush. I am planning to read a biography of John Adams soon. I have read a biography of Benjamin Rush. Very, very interesting founding father. A bit gossipy. It's weird. Some of his letters actually were to his downfall in some ways, because apparently a letter saying not so positive things about Washington got back to Washington. Oops. But all in all, though, he's one of my favorite founding fathers, and he apparently, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had a falling out, and Benjamin Rush had to, help them reconcile with their letters. And but this is a letter that I thought I would read. While I read the whole thing, it's not that long. Yeah. So you'd have to know a lot of backstory about the histories, whatever, and with Hamilton coming out on Disney Plus right now, a lot of people are talking about this time period, basically, because it's just such a popular thing suddenly, and I have no problem with that. To me, it's like I hope that people who like the musical decide to read more about the actual history and not just take what the musical tells you and not go anywhere from there, because you're only getting part of the story. But both of these writers had their run-ins with Hamilton, because that's how he was, and Benjamin Rush had a run-in over a yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia, and Rush had one opinion of how to treat everything, and Hamilton had another one, and his doctor's backing him up, and sounds kind of familiar right now, but they never quite recovered their relationship, but they had one to begin with. So this is Benjamin Rush to John Adams on July 13th. I tried to find letters in July, but I didn't always find it. But anyway, 1808. My dear old friend, the campaign of summer disease is being opened, and my duty is calling me at all hours of the day into the field of sickness and distress. I have not had time till now to answer your last letter. The embargo becomes daily more and more unpopular among both farmers and mechanics, whatever. Its influence is in favor of a revolution of the power of our country. I have lately heard that a life of General Hamilton is preparing for the press. It will consist of many documents which will throw light upon the councils of the army and government of the United States during the time Mr. Hamilton acted as aide-de-camp and Secretary of the Treasury under General Washington. One of Hamilton's friends said in my presence a few days ago, the intended publication would show General W. to be a good man, but General Hamilton to be a great man. Let this work end as it will, I shall continue to believe that great men are a lie and mean men vanity, and that there is very little difference in that superstition which leads us to believe in what the world call great men, and in that which leads us to believe in witches and conjurers. The papers will inform you of the death of my brother professor and old enemy, Dr. Shippen. He sent for me in his last illness and discovered, after he was unable to speak, that he carried no hostility out of the world against me. This was a great triumph of truth or of religion in his mind, for he was unfriendly to me ever since my settlement in Philadelphia in 1769. So yeah, it's kind of fun in a weird way after reading the events and everything that happened between these founding fathers to hear their inside conversations. I mean, their families did not destroy these letters, so they may have wanted them to be published later on. I don't know. That biography never got published of Hamilton. No one told his story at that point. Okay, so let's see. Where am I going with this? I was trying to keep in order, and I keep going to the books that I'm going to read from, so I'm going to just kind of jut around a little bit then. This collection I keep intending to read, but I might read it closer to Victober because it is very Victorian. The Illustrated Letters and Diaries of the Pre-Raphaelites, and it's very pretty, but it's not really a collection of letters. It just has quotes from letters and little stories, but it has some beautiful pictures. So it's part of the library. As well as Emily Dickinson. I have a collection of, I should have had the Emily Dickinson tea, but I'm not really talking about her that much. Her selected poems and letters. It's really interesting because a lot of her letters don't have an exact date. They'll have a year, and I'm like, did she not date the letters? She's an interesting person. She probably just put a dash, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's a pretty volume. I have a volume up there too of I think it's Shaw. George Bernard Shaw. This was $2 at the New York Public Library sale. Yes, try to get through a day where I'm not talking about the public library sale. That beautiful 1940 book was also from there, I'm pretty sure. This book, oh, got a little dirt on it, ew. I don't know, I did not buy this book, I'm pretty sure. I think I picked it up somewhere, maybe in my office when they were throwing things out years ago. But I just thought I would hold on to it, The Letters of Virginia Woolf. I'm not going to read from it. I was going to, but I don't want to take 100 years here. But she was a great writer of both fiction and nonfiction, which also made her a pretty great letter writer. So she writes all sorts of people in here. Recommend this. Don't recommend this as much unless you are a violently big fan of, sorry, I'm very sweaty today, gross. Arthur Conan Doyle. But this is a life in letters, so it is like a biography. It goes into his life and then intersperses with his letters, but because a lot of it he doesn't talk about Sherlock Holmes, occasionally he refers to it, it doesn't hold as much interest to me, even though I have a biography of his left at my office as well. So many things I've left at my office. That I think I got from Book Off for like $1. But I have read biographies of Arthur Conan Doyle. I am interested in his life, but not as interested in his entire life as I am in his writing of Sherlock Holmes. Right? Okay, so we're going to go back in time a little bit to, I don't know, Jane Austen. This is a collection that was assembled from her family. And another instance of, I bought this in the public library sale. It was for 75 cents. And then accidentally, I bought it. When I say accidentally, I just forgot that I had it, I guess. I bought it at Book Off a few months ago for $1. So I guess if anyone ever wants a copy, but I have it at office, so maybe not. Whatever. It's not, to me, my favorite. I have seen other collections of her letters, which I would like to get a hold of. This is a little and I don't really care for the fact that it's written mostly in, like, her letters are written in italics, which is like, why? I don't know, but uno momento. Okay, I put my bookmark in the wrong place, so I got a little confused there. But, so here's a letter from March 24th of 1813 to Cassandra, and she was in London, and she used to stay with her brother Henry in London a lot during this time, a lot during her publishing years. And at one point she says, Henry and I went to the exhibition in Spring Gardens, a lot of portraits and stuff. It is not thought a good collection, but I was very pleased, particularly, pray tell Fanny, with a small portrait of Mrs. Bingley, excessively like her. I went in hopes of seeing one of her sister, but there was no Mrs. Darcy. Perhaps, however, I may find her in the great exhibition, which we shall go to if we have time. I have no chance of her in the collection of Sir Joshua Reynolds' paintings, which is now showing in Pall Mall, and which we are also to visit. Mrs. Bingley's is exactly herself. Size, shaped face, features, and sweetness. There never was a greater likeness. She is dressed in a white gown with green ornaments, which convinces me of what I had always supposed, that green was a favorite color with her. I dare say Mrs. D will be in yellow. I like that because I like the idea that she actually did want to visualize her characters, because you don't get a lot of physical descriptions of most of the characters. Maybe their height, maybe they had fine eyes, but I like the fact that Jane herself did have a vision. So, I don't know. And I just like that she actually was really, she liked to talk about her books to her family and other people. So, yeah, I also have this lovely collection of the letters of Vincent van Gogh. This is how we pronounce it in the United States, so no corrections, please. The letters of Vincent van Gogh. He kept up a correspondence with his brother Theo, and they were, they were very close. His brother did a lot for him, getting his artwork out there. Not that it was incredibly successful, but they loved each other very much, and so their letters were loving and intense and a little businesslike sometimes, but mostly it's a little sad. I don't know. I had picked some parts from July of 1890. I did pick a lot of people. Most of the writers here, or at least the recipients, died in July. So I don't know if I'm just increasingly morbid in my life, but there was 7th July 1890. He wrote, "Dear brother and sister," it's his brother's wife. My impression is that since we are not quite ourselves and rather preoccupied anyway, there's relatively little point in insisting on a clear definition of the position we are in. It rather surprises me that, there being no agreement, you seem to want to force a situation. Can I do anything about it? Perhaps not. But have I done anything wrong? Or is there anything you would like me to do? And so, he was just getting a little bit desperate about his situation. And but then his sister wrote back to him, his sister-in-law, reassuring. And he wrote later, a few days later, "The letter from Joe has really been like a gospel for me, a deliverance from the distress caused by the hours I shared with you, which were rather difficult and trying for us all. It is no small matter when we are all made aware that our daily bread is at risk. No small matter when for different reasons we are also made aware of the precariousness of our existence. Back here I too still felt very sad, and the storm which threatens you continued to weigh heavily on me as well. What is there to be done? Look, I try to be reasonably good-humored in general, but my life is also under attack at its very root. My step is also unsteady. I was afraid, not entirely, but a little, nevertheless, that my being a burden to you was something you found intolerable. But Joe's letter proves to me clearly that you do realize that I am working and making an effort just as much as you are. So, having arrived back here, I have set to work again. Although the brush is nearly falling from my hands, and because I knew exactly what I wanted to do, I have painted 3 more large canvases. They are vast stretches of wheat under troubled skies, and I didn't have to put myself out very much in order to try and express sadness and extreme loneliness. I hope you'll be seeing them shortly, since I'd like to bring them to you in Paris as soon as possible. I'm fairly sure these canvases will tell you that what I cannot say in words. That is, how healthy and invigorating I find the countryside." So anyway, in the end, he writes his ending is always handshakes in thought, or some kind of handshakes of some sort. So that's just a little bit of his state of mind in his last month. I've read various biographies of Vincent van Gogh, and some of them say that he may have been shot by accident by some kids and may have just covered up for them. That's possible, but sometimes when you see his state of mind, you just don't really know. But I find him so intense, but so interesting. Like, I almost wish I could have talked to him and gotten to know him. Maybe that's the Doctor Who fan in me because of that episode. Oh my goodness. But I don't know. Part of me thinks I might have found him repulsive too, because I don't know. It seems a lot of people were kind of repulsed by him physically, and I hope I wouldn't have been that person. She always wonder. From 100 years away, over 100 years away, it's easy to romanticize things, So that's all I'm going to read from, but I'll show you a couple more things. I have shown you this so many times, but this is nonfiction. I've seen people refer to this as a novel. It feels like a novel in some ways, because it does move very well, but 84 Charing Cross Road, one of my very favorite collections of letters. And what I like about it is it was very intentionally put together by one of the main writers, Helene Hanff. Well, she was the one who initiated the conversation, so it's mostly her letters. So it's not like this is all we found that wasn't burnt. This is an actual collection that she put together herself, and it was highly successful at the time. Not that she made a fortune from it, but, you know, she had some form of literary success, which to her was probably a big deal at this point. I always recommend this. There's so many other videos I put about her that I don't really need to. I hope to link it, but I probably will forget to do so. But yes, excellent. If you like to read books and about bookshops, A Correspondence Between New York and London is a fantastic one. Anyway, and this is what I'm reading now, so I'm not going to really talk about it that much. I'm still reading it and rereading it actually. But this is actually, I don't think it's letters because of the way it responds to each other. I think it's a collection of emails. But I will let it slide this time because emails are basically letters. If written properly, they are letters that you send to each other. I know people a lot of times just dash a few thoughts and links and stuff now in emails, but really, you can communicate the way we used to by writing letters. And that is the two guys read Jane Austen. And it makes sense too because of their generation. They were about 60 when they wrote this. It's just two men who are both, I think they're both writers, and they like to read things together and discuss it. They read the obituaries, they read Moby Dick, and then here they read Pride and Prejudice and Mansfield Park and discuss it. So it's like a book club, kind of, between two men. I will talk about it further. That's all the collection I could dig up because I probably have more, but I'm not going to go crazy. I have two books, one of which I read the entirety of. This is To the Letter by Simon Garfield, Curious History of Correspondence. So this is a book about writing letters, as is, I don't think I finished this one, so I should get back to it. It doesn't seem like a long one. Kind Regards, The Lost Art of Letter Writing by Liz Williams. Beautiful cover. God, one of those beautiful postal boxes. Was that supposedly designed by like Anthony Trollope or something? I think I heard something about that, so. I managed to throw Anthony Trollope into the mix. I don't think I have a collection of his letters, or Agatha Christie, or Dickens. I don't think so. But I'm sure if I have any biographies of any of these people, their letters will be in there. Again, very useful. So, to sum it up, I do like reading letters. I don't usually sit and read back to front to back, middle to back, I don't know. These collections, I usually kind of thumb through them. Although I did, you know, Ada of Charing Cross Road, obviously. But I just kind of like to get into people's heads here and there. Just a little bit. I know you will never get entirely because people will even be on their guard when they write things down. Because, I mean, people got blackmailed for their letters. You know, there was that famous Sherlock Holmes, I think it's called Charles Augustus Milverton, where there was this man who blackmailed people like crazy because he got a hold of their love letters, etc. So it could be used against you. There's something to say about that. But, I mean, reading these things kind of brings me back to my childhood. I say my childhood, my older childhood, like the 80s and the mid-80s to like the 90s when I used to write letters more frequently. Because that's what we did. Phone calls outside of like the city were long distance and we didn't have WhatsApp or whatever, so if you wanted to keep in touch with somebody you had to write letters, and I loved it. Honestly, I had pen pals, I had relatives that were pen pals, I had some friends from school, I had some pen pals that they set up, you know, they get these pen pals set up for you. I really loved it. I still like receiving personal letters sometimes, not bills, but personal letters from people. And occasionally I do. My sister and I sometimes write letters to each other. I went to like an exhibit in the Morgan Library about letter writing a couple of years ago, where they gave you like stamps and stationery to write letters with. So we did that. It was so much fun. And I have like stationery and fountain pens and markers and whatnot to write with. So I mean, I do still like that, and occasionally other people I know will write me letters, but I don't really rely on it the way I used to. So when I get one or when I write one, I consider it to be a nice little novelty surprise, but I don't think I'm as good or as faithful at writing letters as some people are still. And that's fine with me. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you guys like reading letters, if you like receiving letters, if you like the idea of this at all. And hope I haven't bored you too much with my reading out loud skills. This is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and letter-filled day. Goodbye.